Appreciate that. And Senator James, she will join us soon. And so we'll get started. Once again, appreciate everyone for joining us here on the Joint Committee on Children, Youth, and Families. We'll bring this meeting to order. We greatly appreciate my colleagues and everyone who are presenting, taking the time out your schedule to actually be here on today. We have an aggressive schedule, so I want to go ahead and get us started so that I know some of us need to get back to work or get back to a lot of things that's going on. So we'll get started with our local management boards, the Maryland Association of Local Management Boards. So it's good to see that we have Nancy and Kim here. So I want to go ahead and turn it over to you all so that we get started. So the floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Chairs, senators, delegates. I am delighted to be here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Local Management Boards. My local management board is called the Anne Arundel County Partnership for Children, Youth and Families. We all call one another our names differently because we don't really like Maryland local management boards. It always sounds a bit formal. So if we can turn the slides, I will get going and I will go as quick as I can. And then I think I'm handing over to Nancy at some point, and then she's going to hand back to me. So I actually came to Maryland because of this model, because I thought it was so clever. I've been in health and human services my entire professional life. And here in Maryland, I found this model that had the governor at the top with his vision and his or her vision and broad goals. And round about the 1990s, through systems reform, they created something called the Children's Cabinet, which was the heads of all health and human services agencies being brought to the table to create cross-agency strategies and outcomes and results. And the important thing there is this notion of creating a holistic approach to children and families instead of this siloed approach that we have taken in the past. And then at some point, they created the Governor's Office for Children, which is the agency that takes those strategies, outcomes, results, creates a plan, and then works with local management boards to make sure every single area of the state is working the plan. That's how the Maryland model is supposed to work. And it's supposed to be a two-way street, right? So the governor, through the Children's Cabinet, through the Governor's Office, are talking about their priorities. We are working at them at the local level, and then we're talking back through the layers saying, well, this worked and this didn't. Our local community here in Dorchester County is different to Anne Arundel County, is different to Baltimore City. So that's the beauty of the model. And it was started in 1992. Next slide, please. You do the next slide, Kim. So at the moment, we have a children's cabinet. Again, thank you very much. It went away for a little while, and this governor brought it back, and they are fulfilling their role to set priorities related to the governor's vision of ending child poverty and creating economic mobility across the state. And they've given us some pillars to work on, and they're just about to announce their strategic plan that we, the local management boards, will work on at the local level. And they divided it into 3 pillars: children, families, and communities. And the notion is that we will all work together to produce outcomes based on these pillars. Next slide, please. So the slide before, or maybe it's the slide after, I don't know. Thank you, Kim. So there's a big picture going on in Maryland at the moment that you've all been part of. Part of it is Blueprint and all the things that are happening inside K-12 education. Part of it is this hub and spoke model for behavioral health, was created by the consortium, which was created by legislators. And then there's the Enough Act. And why this is important to local management boards is that we are part of all of those things. We're in the middle. In the hubs and spokes, some of us are hubs, some of us are spokes. So Kim and Howard is a hub. Me and Anne Arundel, I'm a spoke. We're all on our blueprint at the local level committees to try to ensure that blueprint is implemented in the way you, the legislators, want it to be implemented. And then, of course, we have the Enough Act, which is now the Enough Initiative from Governor Moore, which we are all also involved with. I think the important thing for us is this has always been the work of local management boards. It's different titles, it's different pillars, but the basic notion is that we at the local level work on all of these areas in the understanding that A, we have to collaborate or none of this can work. And we have to braid and blend funding that's not just government funding, but a whole set of other funding. And that locals differ. The local environment differs depending on a whole set of things, including geography. So that's the big picture. There we are in the middle. Next slide, please. So here we are in statute. Back in 1992, we were created in statute. And it's nice and sort of open, which gives us a real opportunity to fit various state initiatives to what we need at the local level. We're supposed to really ensure there's some decision-making capacity at the local level, and I know all you legislators know how important that is. We come up with a community plan, but first of all, we do the needs assessment. So we do a large-scale needs assessment that talks about local needs, not just great big state system needs, but what are the local needs and what's going on in our neighborhoods. And all of you know that some of our neighborhoods are doing really, really well, and some of our neighborhoods are very vulnerable and doing very badly. And we like to talk about that as local power and collective voice, because the wonderful thing about us is we're all dropped down in local neighborhoods, but we all also talk to one another and meet one another as an association. And so we get that nice statewide picture, as well as having our heads down in doing our work at the local level. Is this where you take over, Nancy?
I can.
You can give me it back at 8 if you like. I just thought they'd like to hear a different voice.
That's fine. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to be here today and speak to you. So, who are we? What do we as LMBs do? We act very nimbly during crisis situations. We've been doing that recently in response to some of the federal crises that have been going on and trying to be responsive to the needs within our communities. We did that during the pandemic, where we saw our numbers drastically increase to the numbers of families and children that we were serving then. We convene our local stakeholders and strengthen the local decision making at the local level. Again, doing the needs assessments, developing 3 to 5 year plans for our communities. We use a lot of data to track outcomes for our children and families, taking a look at programs and how our programs are performing in the community. We like to be able to coordinate those services, break down the silos, and make it easier for families to access resources within our community. Again, a lot of capacity building, working with our local nonprofit organizations to build our own local capacity to meet the needs within our communities. And last but not least, being creative about how we build out a system of services that will improve the overall outcomes for our families. We work really, really hard with all of our families and children and within our communities to improve those outcomes. As Pam indicated, some communities are doing really, really well. Others are struggling and need more assistance. And we look to provide that capacity to assist there. The next slide. We want to talk a little bit about our success with our local care teams in our local communities. LMBs have been we're charged through systems reform with bringing children back into the state to save money. And we successfully did that. Local coordinating councils have been funded and are funded by the Children's Cabinet. They were created to provide assistance to keep our children safe and to try to keep them within our communities. Each of our communities is very different. The resources we have available to us and to our families varies across the state, but our job is to make sure that families are connected to those community-based resources, utilizing them as much as possible to ensure that we can keep children in the least restrictive environment. In addition to that, sometimes our charge is if there is a higher level of care needed for those children is to help ensure that parents have access to the appropriate level of services for their children. Local care teams were formed to be the forum for families and children with, or families with children with intensive needs, where they can come and get access to resources and just know that there are people at the local level there to support them and hear them and connect them whenever possible, to meet those challenging needs that they have. It also allows us to have those interagency discussions on a regular, ongoing basis to support and break down those silos. It's families find it comforting to be able to come to the table and all of their agency partners are in one place and able to coordinate those resources for them and keep making sure that they work for them. Pam, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on our history, guys. Systems reform and the discussion about it actually started in 1978 in Maryland. And by the 1990s, the legislators were really interested in creating a system reform, feeling like that Health and Human Services were not working. Over the years, local management boards have been very involved and often when things get to crisis level, which I think it's really rather a shame. We should be used much more in normal times and not so much as, oh, now what do we do? Let's go to those little nimble agencies and see what they can figure out. But Nancy briefly talked about bringing kids from out of state care. It was a challenge to us. I think it was around about 2009 from actually the state legislature at the time. Can you do it? Can you bring children from out of state back into state and hopefully back home? And local management boards took up the challenge and we were actually successful. But not only that, there's a lot of discussion at the moment in the nation about funding health and human services differently, especially related to what's happening nationally. Maryland was actually ahead of the game in this because when we brought those kids back, they actually gave us money. There was obviously a return on investment for that, for the state. They actually got a lot of money back. And they gave some of that money back to the local management boards to reinvest in their communities. And we had, or at least I think for about 8 years, something called reinvestment dollars that we kept separately, that we had to tell the state how we were going to reinvest in our communities. But interestingly enough, there's a discussion now at the National Reserve in New York about doing something very similar. And I'd love to talk to you about that because I'm part of one of the design teams. But it's very interesting how that had already been part of something in Maryland. And later on, we worked with the Department of Juvenile Services and we created compacts related to the diversion of youth. And if you divert youth from out of home care, you save a load of money. So various local management boards actually signed compacts with the Department of Juvenile Services. And when they were successful and there was actually a saving of money, they got some of that money back. So it's just been very, very interesting how local management boards and the state of Maryland has been on the cutting edge of some of this stuff for many years. So one of the bad things that's happened to us was, like everybody else, the recession hit us very hard. And I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. But we pivoted and we got nimble and we figured out how at least to survive. And come the pandemic, obviously, we were highly instrumental in all of the things that needed to happen, from food to Chromebooks to internet access. My colleagues across the state were immediately on it and our output was up by 150%. So I think it's clear that we are very, very helpful at the local level and that we're really the only agency that has that charge to pull everybody together and try to create a holistic approach to whatever's happening. And so here we are in 2025. Some of us are working as enough quarterbacks. All of us are supporting enough. It's just the same work. The enough work, the enough initiative is just the work we've been doing for 30 years. It wasn't, we have been doing neighborhood-based, place-based work all of this time. So obviously we are involved in that too. The difference at the moment and the difference this year is all of the things that are happening for children and families at the federal level. As federal funds disappear, I can promise you that the issues will be at least somewhat resolved at the state and at the local level. And it's going to take all of us, and I don't just mean county government, state government, but I mean all of us, to shepherd our most vulnerable through the next period of time. I just looked at some new numbers around housing, and it is a very, very serious issue that we're about to face. So let's move on to our budget. I think that's the next slide. So you see what happened to LMBs. So that's what we were getting in 2005. It was 46 and some change million across 24 local management boards. We lost 75% of it in 2012. We managed to survive, but we have never really been given much of an increase since that time. In fact, for the last 3 years, I'm sorry, this graph stops at 2022, but for the last 3 years, we have been level funded by the Governor's Office for Children. If you don't know, we are funded by something called the Interagency Fund. We have asked every year, can you at least start to address these issues? We are going to be working flat out, are already working flat out as things change at the national level. And we believe that that call has really fallen on deaf ears. And so we came to our legislature this year to say, we don't know any other way to make this pitch than to make it to you. It's probably the worst time in the history of local management boards to ask for money, but we honestly did not know any other way to go about it than to come and say to you, we cannot exist on 2005 funding, given what's happening at the national level. And it will be important that we at least somewhat stronger than what we are now. So we're making a legislative ask. And actually, Delegate Harris has agreed to sponsor it. Thank you so much, Delegate Harris. We so appreciate you. And I think that's the last slide. Right, Kim? So, yeah, we are introducing legislation related to the Interagency Fund. We've tried to stagger it so it's not one big hit, but we want to try to get to 30 million by 2030. And remember, we were at 45 million in 2005, and it is now 20 years later. So we're asking for a 3 million increase in this budget year, a 2 million increase in 28, 29, and 30 that would get us to FY 2030, 30 million. I want you to really consider this. We are the only organization that works at both the state and local level, are consistently involved in cross-agency conversations at the national, state, and local level, have been working on the issues related to poverty and inequities for 30 years. We are the right agencies. And I think even given the perilous state we find ourselves both nationally and with our own state budget, not funding us now is really short-sighted. And I will leave that there. We were born of you. The legislators created local management boards. And so I feel safe in coming and making this ask. Thank you very much, everybody. And if I didn't say my name's Pam Brown. I'm not sure I said it for the record. So I'm Pam Brown, Anne Arundel County Local Management Board, Partnership for Children, Youth and Families. Thank you.
We thank you. We appreciate the time here. We ain't missed anyone else to brief, right? That was everyone for your team.
Kim's sick. She's here, but she hasn't got much voice, so we decided to pitch hit for her.
I appreciate it. I didn't want to skip anyone. So before we move on, any question from the team? We do have one. We see Senator Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the presentation. What precipitated the huge funding decrease that you highlighted beginning in 2012? What was different then?
Well, two things going on. It was the recession, and the governor was looking for any savings he could find. And we had a secretary for the Governor's Office for Children who really had no use for local management boards. And it seemed like an easy budget cut. And it wasn't a lot of money, but I guess it seemed like an easy budget cut. And that's what happened. 75% of our funding was announced in the governor's slideshow. That's when we found out what had happened. So that's what happened, Senator. And it's nice to see you.
You as well, Dr. Brown. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions from the team? All right, seeing no hands, I want to thank you all for coming and briefed us, and we thank you for your work. We thank you for your tireless energy that you put towards ensuring that we have what's needed in our states and locally. So we appreciate you and thank you so much. I'm pretty sure if anybody else had any questions they probably didn't want to ask here, they could follow up with you all. And the briefs are in you all's emails as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you to all of you. And we appreciate how much you do. And we know how difficult your life is at the moment. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. The team makes the dream work. Absolutely.
That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All righty, team. We're going to move on to the next portion, evaluating and preparing students from cradle to career. And so we're going to start with our National Governors Associations for Center for Best Practices, Program Director Seth. Good to see you. And so we will turn it over to you at this moment.
Well, good to see all of you, and thank you, Chair Senator James, Chair Delegate Harris, and distinguished senators and delegates of the committee. My name is Seth Gerson. I'm Program Director for K-12 Education at the National Governors Association, and again, greatly appreciate the invitation to join you for this meeting today and the opportunity to present on NGA's recently released Let's Get Ready Roadmap for Governors. First, just a little background on National Governors Association. Our members are the governors in all 50 states and 5 territories, and since 1908, we primarily supported governors by providing them with a bipartisan safe space, a safe forum to connect with each other, exchange ideas, share promising practices, strategies they're using, challenges they're facing. It's an opportunity for governors to share what's working and what's not across party and state lines. There's a spirit of bipartisanship that really infuses all of our work, and that starts with our leadership, which is always a current Democratic governor and a current Republican governor. Our current chair is Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, and I'm particularly pleased to note that our vice chair is Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, who's in line to become chair of NGA in July 2026. And we have an 8-member executive committee, evenly represented by current Republican and Democratic governors, that oversees all of our work as well. So last year, our chair was Governor Jared Polis of Colorado, and each NGA chair gets to select an initiative and an issue that they can engage and convene a cross-section of bipartisan governors from across the country over a 1-year period. And Governor Polis chose to focus on education through his Let's Get Ready, Educating All Americans for Success initiative. And the initiative sought to address 3 really fundamental questions. First, what do learners need to know at every step of their educational journeys to achieve success in life and to ensure that the nation continues to be competitive? Second, how are we currently measuring outcomes to ensure that education practices as well as systems are effectively delivering for students and our economy? And third, how can we shift limited resources and change policies and practices to do more of what works to achieve these outcomes? To explore strategies for addressing these questions, NGA hosted 8 convenings for governors to connect with each other and experts in the field from July 2024 to July 2025. And experts ranged from Sal Khan, the CEO and founder of Khan Academy, to Jeffrey Canada, the founder and president of Harlem Children's Zone, Dr. Angela Duckworth, Rosalie and Egbert Chang, professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Raj Chetty, William A. Ackman, professor of public economics at Harvard, and former U.S. Secretary of Education and SUNY Chancellor, Dr. John King. And videos and summaries of each of these convenings can be found at nga.org/letsgetready. Again, sort of overviews of each of the different meetings and the speakers that spoke at them, as well as the videos. And so the initiative culminated really in the release of a Let's Get Ready roadmap for governors at the NGA summer meeting in Colorado Springs this past July. And at its core, the roadmap identifies a measurement mismatch between the skills, knowledge, and traits that we want our students to possess upon high school graduation and what we currently invest in and measure. The roadmap introduces a framework for ways that governors and state leaders can reimagine and strengthen their education systems to redefine student success and readiness across 4 key areas: academics, workforce preparedness, civic engagement, and overall student mental health and well-being. And the roadmap emphasizes that student readiness really begins with a focus on the academic foundations of math and reading. Results, as I know you all know from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP, released earlier this year, showed a continued decline for 4th and 8th grade students in math and reading in nearly every state across the country. And as such, there's been a bipartisan gubernatorial interest and investment in strategies to boost evidence-based literacy instruction and math supports, from deploying literacy and math coaches and professional learning for educators to promoting high-impact tutoring and leveraging summer and after-school programs, all working to boost comprehensively supports for the core academic areas of math and literacy. I saw on the agenda that we may be joined today by one of the national leaders in this area on literacy instruction, State Superintendent Dr. Carrie Wright. Thank you to Superintendent Wright, Governor Moore, the Maryland State Board of Education, and all of you, this committee, the Maryland State Legislature overall, for working together to continue to advance efforts on this critical literacy issue. The roadmap also makes clear that to be prepared for success after high school graduation, students need not only foundational skills in math and literacy, but also key durable and employability skills such as communication, collaboration, problem solving, adaptability, and critical thinking to ensure post-secondary and workforce readiness, and that students are well prepared for the world of work. One of NJA's partners on the Let's Get Ready initiative, the Urban Institute, shared an analysis from their Student Upward Mobility Initiative that found that parents, educators, and employers are generally on the same page when it comes to this more holistic view of skills and competencies and what skills they want to see students possess upon high school graduation. And there's been significant movement in this direction with an increase in state portrait of graduate frameworks that more broadly define student skills beyond exclusively academics. Also, as part of the roadmap, Urban Institute produced research that identified college and career readiness measures that have the biggest impact on positive student outcomes after high school, including higher education enrollment, persistence or degree attainment, and employment and earnings. For example, Urban Institute shows there's strong evidence that enrollment in AP or IB classes and mandatory ACT or SAT testing correlates with higher education enrollment. That academic, early college, or dual enrollment participation correlates with persistence or degree attainment. And that military enlistment has a strong correlation with employment and earnings. As governors and states explore additional metrics for measuring student success and readiness, ongoing research like Urban Institute's included in the roadmap will be critical for informing which measures have a stronger connection to post-high school outcomes. Lastly, the roadmap outlines the steps that governors and states can take to advance this work. First, defining a vision for readiness at every level of the education system and identifying gaps in metrics and the data needed for the state to make progress on advancing that vision. Second, strengthening alignment between state systems of early childhood, K-12, post-secondary, human services, and the workforce, breaking down those silos to better support children, students, and schools throughout the education and workforce continuum. That cross-agency work that Pam mentioned earlier, that's so critical for providing the strongest support, as we know, for students, families, and schools. And third, building systems and infrastructure to better measure and connect student data from that early childhood to post-secondary and workforce outcomes. And lastly, making this publicly available and developing a public dashboard that tracks and communicates data to educators, policymakers, business leaders, parents, and families about that redefined holistic vision of student success and readiness. With Governor Polis's year as NGA chair ending in July 2025, we're now using the roadmap as a springboard for an 18-month project to support a cohort of 6 to 8 governors governor-led state cross-agency teams to advance their governor's vision for education through the development of a dashboard of metrics across those different areas of readiness, across academics, post-secondary and workforce readiness, civic engagement, and overall mental health and well-being, and tailored to a state's context, policies, and priorities. The project will launch early next year and run through July 2027. We'll continue to update cohort state efforts on the NGA website throughout the next 18 months. We want to make sure that this is learning that's shared across governors and states as this cohort goes through the work. So I'll end there. Thank you again for your leadership, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm happy to take any questions.
I appreciate that. So thank you so much. Being that this is this section is all together cradle to career, if everyone's okay, we can continue on with the other presenters and then just take the questions at the end, if that's okay with everybody. All right, so we just jump right into the next portion of the Maryland Data System Centers. We have Ross, Dr. Ann, Dr. Angela. I'm not sure who wants to go first, but I'm going to toss it over to you all. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you for having us. Chairman Harris and members of the Joint Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Ross Goldstein. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, and I'm joined by Dr. Ann Kellogg, who's the Director of Reporting Services and the Liaison to the Higher Education Commission, and Dr. Angela Henenberger, who's the Director of the Research Branch and an Associate Professor at the University of Maryland School of Social Work. You can go on to the next slide. So just briefly, what we hope to do today is we're going to provide you with a brief overview about the MLDS Center, its operations and data. We'll give you a very high-level summary of some of our research and reporting output and capabilities, and then we're going to provide you with specific focus on the Career Preparation Expansion Act reporting that we've done over the past several years. You can go on to the next slide. So the MLDS Center is an independent state agency that is charged with developing and maintaining a data system that compiles and links student and workforce data from all levels of public education, child and youth services, and the state's workforce. We then use the data to generate timely and accurate information about student performance that can be used to help inform policymakers and practitioners as they work to improve the state's education system. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So the center is overseen by a 15-member governing board that includes the principal of each data sharing partner agency and other key stakeholders. The center has 15 state PIN positions and is organized into 3 branches. There's a data and systems management branch. This branch includes our data management coordinator, Ms. Molly Abend, who is also our liaison to the State Department of Education, and our CIO, Tejal Cherry, who manages the system, its security, and the majority of the center staff, who are mostly IT professionals. The next is the Reporting Services branch, which is led by Dr. Ann Kellogg, and that branch is responsible for our dashboards, data requests, and center reports. And then finally, the Research branch, which is through an intergovernmental agreement with the University of Maryland School of Social Work. And it includes subcontracts with various other state institutions, so including the University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland Baltimore County, and Morgan State University. So the Research branch, which is what Dr. Henenberger manages, provides us with our in-depth research and analysis and coordinates the work of various external researchers. And you can go on to the next slide. Thanks. So this is what we refer to as our wheel of data, and I think it provides a good perspective on the scope of our longitudinal data system. I'm just going to run through it very quickly, starting in the bottom right. So we receive data from the State Department of Education on pre-K, for pre-K through 12 student data, including attendance, assessments, discipline, and information on schools and staff. From the Higher Education Commission, we get data from all public and state-aided institutions, including enrollment, degrees, courses, and financial aid. We also receive health professional and occupational license data from the Department of Health. We receive child welfare data from Office of Human Services. Right now, that's limited to just the out-of-home placement data, but there's plans to expand that as well. Then from the Department of Labor, we receive wages and industry sector of employment for Maryland workers, and we also receive adult education and workforce development data. We receive juvenile delinquency data from the Department of Juvenile Services, and there's a few other sources, including driver's license data from MBA, which we use to assist with data matching. You'll see there's a little blue link at the bottom right of this page, but that's a link to our complete data inventory. It's available on our website in a sort of easy to use sortable format, so you can get a good understanding of the full scope of the data set. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kellogg, who's going to talk about some of the reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein, and thank you, Chairs James and Harris and members of the Joint Committee. The MLDS Center uses the data that Mr. Goldstein just reviewed with you to provide a wide range of analysis to inform state policy. To demonstrate the power of the data we have, I'm going to share 4 slides of our work. For example, the first slide that you see here, we join data from the Maryland State Department of Education, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and the Maryland Department of Labor to look at wage outcomes at age 25 for high school graduates who earn a college degree and for those who attempt a college degree but do not earn a college degree. And we compare that to the living wage in Maryland to kind of see the difference in financial outcomes for these groups. Next slide. Or in another example, we join data on apprenticeships with wage data to look at labor market outcomes for individuals who complete registered apprenticeships in Maryland. The reporting series looks at outcomes by the different types of apprenticeship programs they complete, as well as by the sectors that they're engaged in the labor market. Next slide. We can also intersect data from different sources to study how educational activities during high school impact college going, such as in the chart you see here, where we can look at the rate of college going for students who are duly enrolled in high school compared to those who were never duly enrolled in high school. Next slide. Finally, we can leverage data from the Department of Human Services, the Maryland State Department of Education, and the Maryland Higher Education Commission to look at vulnerable student populations, such as those who experience homelessness in high school or who were in foster care. As seen in the charts here, we explore the rates at which they enroll in college, the rates at which they are retained to the second year of college, and the rates at which they earn college degrees. Next, Dr. Henenberger will discuss the research agenda that guides the work of the MLDS Center and highlight work from the research branch. After that, I'll be back to share with you highlights from the Career Preparation Expansion Act report.
Thank you, Dr. Kellogg, and thank you, Chairs James and Harris and members of the Joint Committee. The MLDS Center Research Branch is established through an intergovernmental agreement with the University of Maryland, Baltimore. We work with partners in state agencies to define our research questions of interest and find interesting questions and policy relevant questions to our state partners. And we conduct advanced statistical analyses to provide information that can help with policy and practice decisions at the state and local levels. All research and reporting is guided by the MLDS Center Research Agenda, which is set by the MLDS Center Governing Board. The research agenda has 4 overarching research categories, which are outlined on the slide. So first, pathways and pipelines. Second, educational service and workforce outcomes. Third, program and policy evaluations. And finally, methodological inquiries. To help with the understanding of these research categories, I will provide examples of research studies in each of these different categories. Next slide. The data in the MLDS span almost 20 years of data. So the linked longitudinal nature of the database allows for unique explorations of pathways and pipelines, including the entry, transition, and exit points students take into specific education, service, and labor market sectors. The example in the slide shows pathways for students who did not graduate from high school. by their expected graduation year and includes pathways for those students into late graduation and transitions into college and the labor market. We have similar pathways data examining the teacher pipeline and pathways for students involved in the child welfare and juvenile services systems. Next slide. The comprehensive nature of the MLDS data allows us to explore the unique associations between student and institution or school level characteristics and their importance for predicting long-term outcomes. This research often focuses on special populations with the goal of better understanding how outcomes can be improved for specific subgroups of students. For example, in the chart on the slide, we look at the educational outcomes for students who were arrested in high school. We also have research looking at outcomes for students in schools with concentrated disadvantaged populations, children in the child welfare system, dual language learners, among other different characteristics. Next slide. The research branch also conducts rigorous evaluations to determine whether a given program or policy has been successful. Research on programs typically involves comparing students in a program of interest to students who did not get the program to see if students in the program had better outcomes. Some examples of ongoing research in this area include looking at data to look at students in schools with multi-tiered interventions, mentoring programs, and we also have studies looking at career and technical education programs. Policy evaluations often leverage the longitudinal data to look at what happened before and after a specific policy change to see if students had better outcomes after the change. Some examples of policy evaluations we have conducted include examining the early grade suspension ban in K through 3 and increasing computer science course offerings in middle and high school. Finally, I don't have a slide for it, but the final research agenda category is methodological inquiries, which are meant to improve the application of statistical methods to MLDS data. Much of our current work in this area focuses on applying machine learning algorithms with a specific focus on bias that may result when using longitudinal cross-sector data and machine learning. Our research in all of these categories includes a focus on understanding any differences in outcomes for students in different types of schools and across local education agencies in the state. And all of our research is conducted within the context of partnerships between researchers and state agencies to help translate research findings into policy implications for evidence-based decision-making. Now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Kellogg to share highlights from the Career Preparation Expansion Act report.
Thank you, Dr. Hennenberger, and thank you. I'm glad to be back here at the committee to share some information that you had requested about the Career Preparation Expansion Act report. This report is authored annually in conjunction with the Governor's Workforce Development Board. We have generated this report for the first time in 2018, and we are about to report on the 8th consecutive year of the Career Preparation Expansion Act report. This report specifically directs us to look at labor market participation and median quarterly wages for high school graduates 5 years after high school graduation, or at a point when high school graduates are approximately 23 years old. I'm going to share 3 slides to highlight some of the outcomes we look at for these reports. All of the reports are available online. Next slide, please. Each year, the results are approximately the same for labor market participation rates. You may notice that there's what's a pretty obvious outlier right in the middle of the slide on the left side, the first chart. Labor market participation generally for high school graduates 5 years after high school is right around 47–45%. And this measure is looking at the rate at which high school graduates are engaged in the labor market for 9 consecutive months at essentially age 23. Our one outlying cohort where we see the 17% participation rate when you look out 5 years, that is 2020 or COVID. So this rate declined sharply understandably, during the economic shutdown. The chart on the right shows what also is consistent year over year, which is that high school graduates 5 years after high school who are engaged in the labor market for 9 consecutive months have median quarterly wages that range around $7,500 to $8,000. Or taken a different way, you can think of that as between $30,000 and $32,000 a year. We also show in this chart that the quarterly median wage overall results in a shortfall of about $4,000 a quarter, or again, annualized as $16,000 a year between the median wage received by this group of 23-year-olds and the living wage in Maryland. Next slide. What is also consistent in our report year over year, and I can tell you that although it's not on here, the 8th consecutive year will show nothing different, is that this result that I showed overall is not uniform for all high school graduates. As shown here, high school graduates 5 years later who do not earn a bachelor's degree, this is the red bar that you're seeing, have median quarterly wages that are about $4,500 below the living wage. The living wage in Maryland for each of the years is represented by the blue bar. While those who earn a bachelor's degree, which is represented by the brown bar, have median quarterly wages within $500 to $1,000 of the living wage in the state of Maryland. It's important to note that this difference exists between high school graduates who do not continue on to college and those who did, because the wage that you're seeing for high school graduates with the bachelor's degree is a wage that they're receiving upon essentially labor market entry. They will have just finished their bachelor's degree and really are only 6 to 9 months into their career. The wage you're seeing with the red bar for high school graduates really represents a wage for a group who've had 5 years to grow progressively increasing wages in their career trajectory. Next slide. One of the other things that we look at in this report, because the median wage is informative, it gives us a sense of what's happening generally to this population. But one of the really critical data points that we look at each year, and again remains unchanged year over year, as you can see in this slide, is not just what the median wage is, but the rate at which each of these groups who have been engaged for 9 straight months in the labor market actually have a wage that is higher than the living wage. So if we look at the first 2 bars, the orange bar represents overall high school graduates, and the red bar represents those who do not continue on to college. They do have no exposure to college. We only see at that point, 5 years after high school, around 15 to 20% of those who, despite 9 months of continuous labor market participation, having wages above the living wage. Conversely, again, the brown bar here represents high school graduates who have just earned their college degree and have been in the labor market for 9 months. About half of them have a wage above the living wage for the state of Maryland. Next slide. This last slide is put in here to provide for you some references to other work that we've completed, many of our descriptive studies, dashboards, reports, as well as highlights a number of projects that we have participated in, some of which Dr. Hendenberger's research grants have led the way on, tied to studies around college and career standards and assessment standards, but others highlight our work to support the work of other state agencies like correctional education, the Enough Act, the Behavioral Health Administration Workforce Needs Assessment, and the Healthcare Workforce Crisis Commission. The center has participated in a number of these important works and provided data to support policymakers in a variety of state agencies. Next slide. Our contact information is here. I believe we are deferring questions until we've completed all the presentations, but we look forward to any questions you may have about our work.
No, I appreciate that. We're actually going to pause here to take questions. We're going to give time for our next presenters to all hop on. So we're pausing here and take questions from our first 2 sections. So do anybody from the team have any questions or any comments at this particular time? Going once, going twice. All righty. That just goes to show how prepared your presentation was. And so we appreciate you all and your time and your wisdom here in providing this information to us. And we have your contact information. And so if the team members have any other questions or comments, I'm pretty confident they'll be able to reach out to you all. You are more welcome to stay as we transition to our next presenters. I think they all are hopping on now. I do see a few. Tyler, do we need to give folks a few more minutes to hop on, or are we good?
Yeah, so that's not too much trouble. We can take a quick break and resume in a few minutes.
Got it. So I think they need until
So
about
2 p.m. I think would be definitely ideal. So we can pause until then.
Got it. So hope team, if you don't mind, we'll pause for like 5 minutes, and then we will convene back at 2 o'clock. Our MSDA folks are transitioning from another session to our session, and so we just want to give them a little time. Appreciate you all. All righty. It's 2 o'clock. Tyler, do we have everyone on that we need?
It looks like we are good to go.
Sounds good. And we're still streaming, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Appreciate you all, and thank you all for the quick intermission that we had. We wanted to give our awesome folks some time to hop on. We also have Maryland State Department of Education with us. Got our Madam Superintendent here of the schools of Maryland. We appreciate you. We have her team as well, Alex, Tim, Jeff, and Laurel. And so we'll turn the tables over to you all.
Well, thank you so much, Delegate Harris. Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here, excited to bring you up to date with some things that we've got going on, and happy to answer any questions that you may have either at the end of this or later on. Happy to be with you, and looking forward to working in the session with you, as that's coming up right around the corner. So once again, thanks so much. I'm going to turn this over to Jeff Sanderson, who is the Chief for Accountability at MSDE. Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Good afternoon, everyone. Laurel, if we can go to the presentation outline. What we thought we'd do for you all is give you a brief update on our most recent work around assessment and accountability. And we thought we'd start with a quick overview of the current Maryland State report card system. So you'll see on this next slide, there we go. Thank you. So what you'll see here, we have indicated, I want to just draw your attention quickly to the middle column, which is entitled grade span, and the EMH, just so you understand that the E is elementary, M is middle, and H is high. And so what this represents is the indicators by grade band that we use in evaluating system and school progress. And so for elementary, middle, and high school, all of those grade bands are evaluated for their academic achievement. For elementary and middle schools, they're evaluated based on academic progress. All schools that serve and have eligible multilingual learners, we assess them annually in English language proficiency. So that is a part of our accountability system. We also have the softer indicators that are referenced as school quality and student success, which consists of our chronic absenteeism indicator, our school survey, which is administered to teachers and to students, and also access to well-rounded curriculum. And then the final two indicators are reserved for our high school students, and that is graduation rates and readiness for post-secondary readiness. On the next slide, you'll see how we crosswalk all of this into a scoring system. And what you'll see here is in any given school, they can earn a maximum of 100 points. Based on the total points that they earn, that percent value is then converted, and that's what yields the star rating. With current system has a 1 to 5 star system, with 1 being the lowest star you can achieve and 5 being the highest or optimal. In order to achieve 5 stars, you'll see you need to earn at least 75% or more of your points possible. And then you'll see the delineation for the remaining stars where those cut points are. This next slide shows you our most recent results, kind of a high-level overview in the state of Maryland from the 2024-2025 school year. Overall, when you sum across all grade levels, we assess in 3 through 8 and in high school. The overall results for our English language arts proficiency was at 50.8%. For mathematics across those same grade bands, you'll see we had an overall proficiency rate of 26.5%. For those that aren't as familiar with our MCAP system, it is calibrated on a 1 to 4 scoring rubric. A score of a 3 or 4 is considered proficient or passing, if you will. And then the third pie chart you'll see here represents based on our most recent accountability results that we shared. As a matter of fact, in last month in November with our state board and with the community at large, we had 86% of our schools that earned at least a 3-star, which we would consider as being at least the minimal acceptable standard within the grading system that we have. Next slide. And so part of this work I just shared with you, we had English proficiency rate of 50%, a mathematics proficiency rate of 26%. Yet we had 86% of our schools that were achieving at least what we would consider an acceptable star rating within our current accountability system. And so that generated a lot of questions for us. And so back in February of last year, Dr. Wright commissioned a task force to evaluate our current assessment practices and our current accountability system, and to make sure that it's still optimal and serving the needs of Maryland students. We started that work in our first meeting back in May. We had a series of 12 meetings that culminated with a capstone report that we shared with our state board last December, in December of 2024. From that, we continued the work and created a new focus group that was by title our Accountability Advisory Committee that was really tasked with going deeper and further based on the work that was done with the Assessment and Accountability Task Force. We've engaged that group of stakeholders in 6 meetings to date. We'll actually be sharing next Tuesday at our state board meeting the draft findings from the work of that committee and the report that will also be made available for public viewing and for public comment. Next slide, I think we're going to transition to Alex to kind of give you all where we are now based on that brief summary.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. So there are a couple of proposed changes that we are considering and putting forth to the accountability system that we have in place. So as many may know, states' accountability systems are key levers that are used to support schools and then also to drive student outcomes. And at just about every national education conference, there will be at least one session where you see folks like us, state education agency leaders, discussing their accountability system. State superintendents across the country in the last few years have emulated the design of Dr. Wright's accountability system from Mississippi. And now that Dr. Wright is back in Maryland, we are determined to make Maryland's system the best in the nation. It's important to us that the updated system reflects 2 things. One, Maryland's context. This is why we've engaged, as Jeff just mentioned, 18 months of extensive stakeholder input. And we want to make sure that it incorporates national best practices. And that's why we have the Center for Assessment, which is an organization considered best in the nation, facilitating the proposal for the system's updates and design. So our stakeholder group has been broad. It's included teachers, principals, superintendents, district academic officers, higher education folks, Maryland advocates, national experts, and members, of course, of our state board and MSDE team. And in those conversations, we've heard a few key themes from stakeholders. One is the system needs to reward schools for students making academic growth. Our rating system is focused on meeting proficiency standards, but does not always recognize the work of teachers and schools that lift up children academically, where the growth happens. A student may be on a level 1, moves to a level 2, not proficient yet, but that is growth that should be celebrated and rewarded. We want to reward schools for showing that progress versus just assessing, did you or did you not meet the proficiency standards? Second, ratings need to be fair to schools in under-resourced communities. We do not want our system to yield results where schools' star ratings are tightly correlated with their poverty levels. We have to be fair and consider our high poverty schools in the system's design. Third, the system needs to be streamlined and transparent. We've heard that the current system has many inputs into the composite score. A lot of pieces go into producing that final score that gives them their rating, like Jeff just described. And we have an opportunity to streamline that a bit. And then fourth, indicators in the rating system need to adequately differentiate among schools. We've received feedback from the U.S. Department of Education that we need to rethink one of our indicators that is in the system, which is access to a well-rounded curriculum. And of course, we believe that that is important. However, most schools earn these points now, so this indicator isn't adequately differentiating among schools. So we have to address this feedback from our federal counterparts. Overall, our statute in Maryland is one of the most prescriptive in the country. Most states' laws delegate authority to the state board or to the state superintendent, and ours is fairly prescriptive. The current 65% ceiling for academic indicators that's in our law is among the lowest in the nation. So 65% is far lower than our counterparts across the country. We're really just seeking additional flexibility to be able to design a system that reflects what we've heard in this 18 months of stakeholder engagement. And with these updates to our statute, we believe that we can drive some meaningful improvements for the nearly 900,000 students across the state. So with that, I will pass it to Jeff. Am I passing it back to you or to Timothy?
It's going to give us an overview of the college career readiness standards.
Great.
Great. So part of the work of the committee has been to incorporate the new college and career readiness standards that the state board has adopted into that upcoming framework as we start to think through like options for the measures that we have. So we wanted to have a quick overview of the recently adopted the March 2025 college and career readiness standards that apply to the 25-26 school year. And so we can step through the first one. Okay, great. So think of the, as we're kind of laying these out, there's a lot of options here, and we'll start with this first determination, which is really based on an empirical study that MSD commissioned with AIR to look at what was a statistically significant predictor of success. And so that was the GPA piece of that 3.0, and that's where that GPA came in as the first adopted standard from the state board. And then we added the math proficiency piece here for Algebra 1 or proficiency on the state assessment for Algebra 1. And so that's really the primary driver for determining whether a student is college and career ready under Blueprint by the end of 10th grade. And then we heard feedback from a lot of districts related to students demonstrating proficiency on other measures, and that they wanted to have the option of including those students in that proficiency. So we can step to the next one. Great. So we added in some additional assessment options, including SAT, ACT, and then PSAT for students that are demonstrating that readiness in any grade levels, grades 9 through 12, but that's also part of that initial determination by the end of 10th grade that we're expecting. And school systems receive funding for students that are demonstrating this college and career readiness proficiency to support their actual access to pathways such as CTE, dual enrollment, and AP or IB courses. You can do one more. And then another part of the standard that we adopted is we added in a subset for students that have significant cognitive disabilities. We added in the alternate assessments in here. So if students are demonstrating proficiency in math and English on those assessments, they would also be deemed as part of the college and career readiness package that school systems are then funded for. So then we added an addition. So after this like line, the black line for initial determination, then their students have the opportunity to demonstrate readiness if they haven't met any of those markers. And this adds in, so a GPA piece first, which is basically a one-year GPA to see if students have improved that original cumulative GPA in 11th or 12th grade, including the high school math piece. Next. And then we added these, which I'll call the pathway connectors. So students that are already, they may not have been college and career ready, but they may be participating in a college and career readiness pathway under Blueprint. So if they've actually met an industry recognized credential for CTE or apprenticeship, or if they've participated in those initial dual enrollment courses, or they've participated in advanced placement exams and courses, they can demonstrate that readiness through those options because they're actually already doing the work. So they're showing that they actually know the content and they're able to perform at that level that we're expecting for college and career readiness. And then the last one is career aptitude. And so we have the ASVAB, which is set at the higher level for ASVAB. So that's the place which is like the second tier of acceptance into the military. And then we also have the ACT work keys, which is used by some employers to determine whether students are coming in ready to access specific careers within actual post-high school employment. So that is pretty much the CCR package as a whole. So everything to the left of the black line is basically your initial determination. We're looking for like prior to 10th grade. And then if you're not college and career ready, then we would be doing the stuff on the right to demonstrate that readiness. So then how do we incorporate that into the accountability system? We go to the next slide. So we're looking at this as a possibility. We already have an on-track marker for grade 9 in Blueprint as well as in our current accountability system. So we're going to morph those together in some way, shape, or form to show that transition, that grade level transition from 8th to 9th grade. And so we're looking at that early warning indicator of whether students would potentially not be progressing at the rate that they need to graduate on time. So that we like to still keep in and incentivize in the system. And then in the middle, the CCR by grade 10, we're looking at students that did they make that line by grade 10 as the blueprint is kind of outlined? And so that would be another lane of indicator for us to track. And the nice thing is it's a yearly indicator, so we'd be tracking 10th grade students as they progress through. And then the last one is about exiting students. So what's the total package of how many people did we actually get across the line for demonstrating that readiness to be connected to college and career after high school? And so that would be anybody that meets anything on the previous screen. We would be looking at, did they meet that? And then that's the group that would be there. So that's one way that we can do this. That's what the group has been discussing for the accountability advisory group. And then, proportioning this out and replacing some of our existing measures would be the work of the department to bring back to the board and back to potential other advisories. So that I think is it for me.
All righty. Is that it for any other presenters before I open it up to questions? Okay. All right. So any questions from our team? I got one. Senator Signal.
Thank you very much. I had a question for Mr. Reese. You were talking about satisfying some sort of a or the federal partner with regards to something being well-rounded. Could you talk a little bit more about what the communication was and what it is that they're looking for and what we intend to do to meet whatever this request is?
Absolutely, Senator. I'll kick it off and then I'll pass it to Jeff or Tim to weigh in with more detail. It's essentially there's a piece of the accountability system that is the access to a well-rounded curriculum. So these are certain courses like computational, like computer science, arts, world languages, these types of courses that we want all of our students to have. That's a great indicator to have existed in the system. And it is an indicator that almost all of our schools are getting the points for. And so as a result, the feds have said, this is one of your indicators in your system in Maryland that is not adequately differentiating among the schools. For lack of a better term, it's like sort of gimme points where almost all of the schools are receiving them. But Jeff or Tim, please jump in if there's anything I missed there.
I think that's well summed up. One of the responsibilities we have at the state level annually is to do a review of the accountability results and to ensure that it is providing some level of differentiation across schools so we can see which schools are performing higher than other schools. And for this particular indicator, especially at the elementary and middle school levels, it's primarily a participation type of measure. And so the overwhelming majority of our schools are receiving maximum points allowable. And it's not that that's prohibited, but when you are doing a distribution and you have nearly 99% of your schools that are achieving all of the points maximum, the U.S. Department of Ed gave us feedback that it wasn't essentially a meaningful indicator to be used within our accountability system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. I see Delegate Bernice Miracle North. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everyone, for the presentation. I wanted to go back to the discussion on the proposed changes to the grading policy, the star ratings. You mentioned that you talked to several stakeholders or got some feedback. Can you elaborate a little bit on where that feedback came from across the state?
Absolutely. Jeff, can you speak to, I assume, Delegate, that you're referring to like geographically across the state? Or...
Yes, we can start there, yeah.
Great.
So I don't know if I'll be able to do it by memory, but we certainly can get you a list on both sides of membership that participated not only in our assessment and accountability task force. That actually is also included in our capstone report that's available on our website, but we'll send you that as well. But that particular group had approximately 30 stakeholders, which would have comprised essentially from the 5 major regions that we identify within Maryland. That we were intentional about ensuring that we had that, not necessarily all the same roles. So we did have some superintendents. We also had central office leaders that were experts in accountability or experts in teaching and learning, as well as having building-based administrators and teachers that participated. We had representation from our various associations. We had members from higher education that participated, and then advocacy types that helped inform work around students with disabilities, our multilingual learners, and so forth. For the second one, or the second focus group that we called the Accountability Advisory Committee, it was a little bit smaller, had approximately 20 stakeholders engaged in that. And it was more technical in nature because of the body of that work. But again, we would have had representation from all of our, not all of our LEAs, but all of our geographic regions. We had in that particular group 4 current superintendents that participated. And then again, similar types of stakeholders or roles that were participants.
Okay, thank you.
And Delegate, we have a comprehensive list of all, like who the specific members of the task force were, what counties and LEAs they represent. And so I believe Ms. Kratzley is in the process as we speak of emailing that to Tyler to share with you all.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Senator Hinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a similar question as Delegate Maricoud North when that part intrigued me about the presentation. What sort of metrics are you looking to adjust where you feel like the outcome will be more fair to schools that have, higher needs populations?
I can kick us off again, and then so I think, Senator, thank you for the question. As a former principal of a school in a high poverty area, I think it can be dispiriting for teachers and staff when they're moving a student from a level 1 on MCAP to a level 2, but that is not proficient yet, right? So that student who's on a level 2 has not reached a proficiency level 3. If our system adequately captures that growth from a level 1 to a level 2, then we can celebrate that progress, which is a huge accomplishment. A student moving up to a level 2 is something we should absolutely celebrate as academic progress, in addition to making sure that our students are reaching proficiency in the long term. But in any given school's rating system, we would want them to be rewarded for that type of growth. Jeff or Tim, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll say in broader terms, a lot of what we heard from system and school leaders was a system that gives them the opportunity to be recognized for year-over-year change. Right now, if you monitor our accountability ratings annually, there is some change. We are actually increasing, went from 83% of schools in the prior year that were at that 3-star or higher standard up to 86% this year. So there is some movement, but it's a lot of what we heard is if you're not at a cusp of transitioning from, let's say, a lower star level to a higher star level, the time that it takes you to get to that progression can seem eternal in some instances. And so part of what we've been trying to be able to retool is the opportunity that if you really do have a significant change from one year to the next, that it's recognized, and that can be positive or negative. And so that's part of the work of an accountability system to be able to monitor that progress. And then also, as Alex was alluding to, time and time again, I think Dr. Wright heard on her listening tours, and we heard repeatedly just from the various folks that we interact with about being able to recognize growth, even if it's incremental and not at a level that is the obvious. I did not pass prior year, but I passed this year, and we can create systems. There's lots of systems that currently exist that incorporate that type of work, and could be a system of partial credit instead of full credit, but it's still an opportunity where we're recognizing growth of students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions from anyone? Anything, Madam Superintendent? You're good?
Yeah, you've asked some really good questions, and those are questions that have been raised, obviously, during both the task force and the advisory committee. You know, we're just trying to make sure that our schools are really recognized, particularly those schools that have a large number of low-performing children, that they are really being given the credit that they deserve for growing these children. And right now, our model is just not doing that to the extent that it needs to be. So that's one of the things that we're looking to change, is to change to make a bigger portion of the accountability system around growth of all kids for sure, but growth really of the kids that are really struggling at the bottom. So lots more to come. We just kind of wanted to give you a high level of what we've been working on over this past year, and be looking forward to having further conversations around how we can make the system even stronger.
Absolutely. No, we thank you, Madam Superintendent. You know, we are excited about and excited to help and ensure that we have the best school system in the nation, and also being intentional.
Yep.
Ensuring that we are keeping that success moving, not just from the classroom, but straight into their careers.
That's right.
So that is extremely important. I love where you all brought up these different lovely tests. I remember taking the ASVAB. It was about 26 years ago, but I did take it. Don't ask me what my score was, because I can't remember. I need to go back and look at my records. But no, I appreciate you all, and it's good seeing Dr. Smith and Alex again. You all are a great team, so appreciate you all. So
thanks so much.
Thank you. So any last questions from the team? All righty, I think that ends our session for today. I want to pause and give a huge shout out to the staff that has helped put all of this together. I could tell you it is difficult trying to mirror all these schedules together, mirror all of this work. So I thank every single member of the staff for making this happen, putting this together. They did a lot of work. So thank you all so much. And I also want to thank my colleagues for taking the time out of their schedule during this interim. We know that everyone is super busy, and so we appreciate you for taking this time out of your schedule to be here with us. So with that, that's all we had. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And we are adjourned.
Thank you. Happy holidays to everybody.
Same to you.